Hi everyone, welcome back to the kitchen. I am Noreen and this is my kitchen. Today we're going to be making some shepherd's pies, some individual shepherd's pies for my dad to put in his freezer so he can have things to eat whenever he is hungry. Last time we made chicken and stuffing casserole. Today we're going to do his favorite shepherd's pie. And yes, I know I'm using 2 pounds of ground beef, and technically for those of you who live across the pond, you're going to tell me that's not shepherd's pie, that's cottage pie. Well, just ignore it, get over it, and move on, because here in America, we call this shepherd's pie. And I don't like lamb, so there's that. So I have 2 pounds of ground beef that I browned off. This is organic ground beef from Butcher Box. If you guys are not familiar with Butcher Box, it's a great place to get safe, grass-fed, grass-finished beef, chicken, pork, and some seafood. I love it. Not an advertisement. I'm just letting you guys know. I'll leave a link down below if you're interested. And I believe they have a current promotion. I am not sure what it is, but I'll leave it down below so you can check it out. So what we're going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of my veggies. I have 2 cans of mushrooms because right now I don't have any fresh ones, and these will suffice just fine. I'm just going to get these in here, and then we'll add the rest of our fresh veggies, which is going to be a large onion that I chopped up, and about 4 stalks of celery also that I chopped up. And then we're just going to get this in here. I have this over like medium high heat. And I added the mushrooms. Had 1 can was drained and 1 can was undrained because I had a lot of brown bits on the bottom of the pan, and that liquid's going to help bring them up, and it actually did, because now the bottom of the pan is fully clean. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a lid on this, and I'm going to let this sit for, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes until those vegetables get a little bit tender. And then we'll be back and we will add the rest of our goodies, even the slightest bit. I'm adding a couple spoonfuls of garlic. Yes, I know it may not be everyone's favorite, but I like to have it on hand, and that's what we're using today. So I would say at least 2 cloves of garlic, 1 15-ounce can of stewed tomatoes that I ran my scissors through. You can add a can of petite diced tomatoes if you like, or whatever is your preference. If you don't want to add the tomatoes, like if you're allergic to them, please feel free to leave them out. Now I'm going to add 1 envelope of magic seasoning, onion soup mix, everyone's favorite. If you make your own, I would add a 1/4 cup. Give that a stir in there. That's going to be our flavor base. My dad is very, very simple in his taste, and he does not like anything spicy or overly seasoned. So the onion soup mix is going to add the majority of the flavor that we want, along with all the vegetables and everything else that we put in here. So don't worry about it. The next thing I'm going to add is, I have a half of a 2-pound bag of mixed vegetables. This is probably the other half of the bag that we used in the chicken and stuffing casserole. My dad does like a lot of vegetables in his casseroles, so that is the perfect thing to do. So it's green beans, corn, carrots, and peas. Not too much. Like I said, again, my dad, not a big fan of the flavor. And I have about a 1/4 cup of Wondra flour. So this is instant flour. I can add it directly in here, and then we're going to add some water. But we want to get this flour in here first. This is going to help make our gravy. But you don't want this too like juicy. We just want it like enough that it has a little sauce, but not so much that it's drowning. Okay, this is like 2 cups of water. If I want to, I can add more. I'm going to see where this is once it simmers for a few minutes. Notice I did not add any salt, because the onion soup mix contains enough salt that you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so I'm going to let this simmer for until it gets a little bit thick, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what happens next. Okay, guys, I went ahead and I did add a couple more tablespoons of flour, and that's going to vary depending on how like moist your vegetables are, how much liquid you've already introduced, and you see how thick the gravy is. It's just thick enough that it's not soupy, but it's just right for shepherd's pie filling. I did want to mention that I added a good dash, maybe a tablespoon of my favorite gravy magic, which is kitchen bouquet. You might use some other thing, but my mom used this the entire time I was growing up. Have always used this in my kitchen. Honestly, it is so great to have this in your cabinet. Again, not sponsored, just a product that I always have in my pantry. In fact, it's in the cabinet right next to my stove, so it's easy for me to grab and use it. Okay, so this is ready to pan up, and I'm going to take it over to the counter and we will make up these shepherd's pies. I will say also, I made a big pot of mashed potatoes back there on the stove, and those will go on top. So I'll be right back and we can build these together. Okay, I brought you over to the counter. I have set up my individual serving pans for the shepherd's pies. And this is what I typically make my dad's freezer meals in because they're easy enough for him to pull out of the freezer. They're easy enough for me to inventory. And there are a handful of things that I make for him. Shepherd's pie, tuna casserole, chicken and stuffing casserole. Sometimes he requests sloppy joes. Sometimes he requests Salisbury steak or meatloaf. If you want to see any of the things that I have not mentioned, please leave a comment down below and we can do that in the future. I would love to share what I do for him. You know, we've already shared the cake that I baked for him. I usually make him a cake every couple of weeks. Yesterday, we took over some home baked chocolate chip cookies and cinnamon rolls for the next couple of weeks for him to have as a sweet treat. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold this. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that each pan gets a scoop. And you might make a mess, so be careful. And what I do is I start off with one scoop in each pan. And then we're just going to go ahead and fill up the pans until there's enough in there. But you have to remember, you need to leave room for the mashed potatoes, okay? Because you want these to be able to close, and when they bulge, it affects the final outcome. But you also don't want to skimp out on the filling or the mashed potatoes. So that's a quandary. So I think we're going to be good with maybe 3 scoops of filling, and then we'll go move on to the mashed potatoes. So let me go fill these up, and then we'll move on to the mash. I filled up the pans, and some of them I wiped the best I could. I wiped drips off of them. I have some prepared mashed potatoes, and I'm just going to cover the tops, and then I'm going to go in with an offset spatula, spread it out. I'm using a scoop only because it's easier to do that way. So now I'm just going to gently, I might end up adding another, I'm going to add another scoop to each one because this looks like it's going to need it. And that's all you have to do. I'm going to go ahead and continue on, add the rest of the mashed potatoes onto these casseroles, and we'll come back and I'll show you what happens next. I got all of the mashed potatoes spread out also, just FYI. I had enough for an 8-inch square pan for Rick and I for dinner, and probably a second dinner because that's a lot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run my fork over the top. I'm not going to do anything special. I'm just going to run my fork over the top. You do however you want to do yours, because as this bakes, those are going to get nice and toasty. This doesn't have to be anything special. Now we're going to just add a little bit of cheddar cheese on top. Not a ton, just enough to say it was kissed with cheese individually. But I'm going to link the recipe down below from my website, and you can go ahead and print that out for yourself. So the next thing that happens is we're going to put lids on these and label them up and be done. Okay, I have finished panning, sealing, labeling my shepherd's pies for my dad, and this is what it looks like. So you can see I got 6 individual portions for my dad. They're going to go in the freezer, get frozen solid, and then delivered to him later today. We also have shepherd's pie for dinner tonight. I'm making this early in the day, which is kind of nice because now I don't have to think about what we're going to have for dinner. So that is how I make shepherd's pie individual for freezer banking for my dad, who is going to be 86 on his next birthday, lives by himself, and is just doing the best he can. You know, the sad part about watching your parents age is it takes a toll on them and it takes a toll on you. So I hope that you learned something. There'll be a link to the recipe down below in the information box. If you would, please give the video a thumbs up so YouTube knows that you liked it and pushes it out to more people who might be searching for similar information. And also be sure and hit the subscription bell, the subscription button. Even if you think you're subscribed, maybe you got unsubscribed and this just happened to show up in your feed. I appreciate you all. I love you all. And I hope that you give this a try and I hope that you love it. And until next time, I'll see ya.